All right, so we're diving into some fascinating reports today, all about the skills adults need in this crazy world we live in. And it looks like you're really trying to figure out how this all impacts those big decisions, the policymakers, government agencies, and businesses are all wrestling with globally.
Yeah, definitely. These reports, they offer like a really insightful look at where we are and where we need to head.
Yeah.
I think the core of it all is this 2023 survey of adult skills, which is a pretty massive study, covering literacy, numeracy, problem solving across 31 countries.
Wow. Okay. So 160,000 adult survey. That's a serious chunk of data and representing 673 million people. That's got to paint a pretty clear picture, right?
Right.
What are some of the things that kind of jump out at you?
Well, one thing that really grabs your attention right off the bat is the consistency of countries like Finland and Japan. They're always scoring high across all three of those skill areas we talked about. So for someone like you who's trying to understand how this impacts policy and business decisions, those countries offer some really valuable models.
So those Nordic education systems everyone always talks about, they're actually living up to the hype.
It seems so, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows, unfortunately. The report also points out countries like Chile and Croatia that consistently score below the OECD average. And here's a stat that should make policymakers and business leaders really stop and think. Nearly 20% of adults across all OECD countries are low performers in all three skill areas.
Yeah, I can see why you call that a red flag. I mean, it's one thing to maybe struggle with one specific skill, but to be low across the board has got to have some serious ripple effects.
Absolutely. Low skills, they're directly linked to a whole bunch of negative outcomes. Unemployment, poverty, less civic engagement, even poorer health. It's not just an individual struggle, it impacts the whole fabric of society.
Okay, that's a pretty sobering thought. And I'm guessing this is where the changing nature of work really comes into play. The report talks a lot about how the actual tasks people do at work have shifted so dramatically since the 1980s. Exactly, right. We're seeing a rapid decline in those routine manual tasks. And at the same time, jobs that require social skills, critical thinking, complex problem solving, those are on the rise. AI and automation are really accelerating that transformation.
This is where it gets interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because we always hear about AI replacing jobs, but the report seems to suggest it's more nuanced than that.
What's fascinating is that AI isn't just replacing jobs, it's transforming them. Think about this. There's a study that found companies adopting AI saw a surge in demand not only for digital skills, but also for critical thinking and communication. So for businesses and policymakers, it's not just about investing in the technology itself, it's about understanding how human skills can actually complement and enhance that technology.
So it's less about man versus machine and more about finding that synergy between the two.
Exactly.
Right.
And that brings us to another really important point, the skills gap. The report shows a pretty significant disparity between those with higher education and those with less.
And this isn't just about individual achievement. The report makes it clear that this gap has consequences for entire societies.
And in some countries, that gap is actually widening, which is really worrying. This isn't just an education problem, it's an economic and social challenge that could lead to stagnation and instability. Policymakers need to understand the urgency of addressing this, and businesses need to be aware of the potential talent pool they might be overlooking.
One thing that really surprised me was the finding that adults in Finland with just upper secondary education outperform those with tertiary education in many other countries.
That's a great point. It really highlights the importance of quality and equity in education systems. It challenges that assumption that more years of education automatically equals higher skills. For policymakers, this is a strong argument for investing in quality education at all levels.
It's a reminder that we need to look beyond just those simple metrics like years of schooling. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the gender dimension. The report reveals a pretty persistent gaps, especially in STEM fields.
Yeah. While women generally score higher in literacy, they tend to lag behind in numeracy, particularly in certain countries. And this gap is even more pronounced in those STEM fields, which are becoming so critical for economic growth and innovation.
What's really striking is the report's finding that even when women perform as well as men in STEM subjects, they're still underrepresented in those fields.
Right. It makes you wonder why this is a huge issue for both policymakers and businesses. Are there systemic barriers, unconscious biases, a lack of role models that need to be addressed? We're missing out on so much potential innovation and economic growth by not fully tapping into the talents of women in STEM.
It's about harnessing the full potential of our workforce. Now let's move on to something the report calls skill mismatch.
Skill mismatch basically means people are either overqualified or underqualified for the jobs they have, and it's a problem that has ripple effects across the economy.
The report actually says that 33% of workers across OECD countries are experiencing some kind of mismatch, whether it's in qualification skills or field of study.
That's a huge number. And it highlights the need for better alignment between education systems, individual career paths, and the evolving needs of the job market.
So it's not just about having skills, it's about having the right skills for the right jobs.
Exactly. And this misalignment comes at a cost.
And that brings us to the economic and social costs associated with both low skills and these mismatches.
The report found that overqualified workers, for example, earn about 12% less than their well-matched counterparts.
So not only are individuals not reaching their full potential, but they're also facing a financial hit.
It's a loss for both individuals and the economy as a whole. And it's not just about income. Remember, low skills are linked to a whole cascade of negative social outcomes: less civic engagement, poorer health, you name it.
It really underscores how interconnected all these issues are.
Exactly. This is why investing in skills development is so crucial. It's not just an economic imperative. It's about building a healthier, more equitable, and more resilient society for everyone. Welcome back. So we've kind of just dipped our toes into this really complex skills landscape, but now I think it's time to shift gears a little bit and think about what we can actually do about it. What are some potential solutions?
Yeah, I'm ready for some action here.
Mhm.
I mean, we've uncovered some pretty daunting challenges, but knowing our listener out there, I'm sure they're eager to hear how these insights can actually translate into action,
Sure.
whether that's in the world of policymaking, government agencies, or the business world.
Absolutely. And the first thing we need to realize is there's no magic bullet, no one size fits all solution. The report makes it clear that every country, every region has its own unique strengths and challenges.
So no cookie cutter approach, huh?
Not a chance.
Yeah.
But there are some foundational strategies that can guide us. One really key area is investing in early childhood education.
Starting early makes sense.
But yeah.
It's about building that solid foundation right from the start.
Exactly. High quality early childhood programs, they have a lasting impact on cognitive development, social skills, even emotional well-being. It's like setting the stage for a lifetime of learning and adaptation. For policymakers, this is a prime area for investment with the potential for really long-term returns that benefit society as a whole.
It's an investment in human potential, really.
Yeah.
And what about primary and secondary education? Where do we go from there?
I think we need to rethink our approach. It's not just about memorizing facts and figures anymore.
So ditch the rote learning and embrace something more dynamic.
Exactly. The report really emphasizes the growing demand for skills like critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, communication. These are the skills that empower people to navigate a world that's in constant flux.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about creativity. AI can churn out content, but human ingenuity, that's going to be more valuable than ever.
I'm really struck by how this challenges those traditional views of education. It's less about filling a vessel with knowledge and more about giving individuals the tools to learn and adapt and thrive in this ever-changing world.
That's a great way to put it. And equally important is making sure that everyone has access to quality education, regardless of their background or circumstances.
Equity is key. We can't afford to leave anyone behind in this skills revolution.
Exactly. Right. We need to address those systemic barriers that prevent certain groups from reaching their full potential, whether those barriers are based on socioeconomic status, gender, ethnicity, or location. This is where targeted policies and interventions become really crucial.
Leveling the playing field is absolutely key. Now, what about the role of higher education and vocational training? How do they fit into this evolving landscape?
They're still incredibly important, but they also need to adapt. Universities need to be offering programs that are aligned with the demands of the modern workforce, making sure graduates have the skills that employers are actually looking for.
No more degrees gathering dust on a shelf.
Exactly. And vocational training programs need to be flexible and responsive to the changing needs of industries, equipping people with the skills to adapt to new technologies and forge new career paths. And it's not just about that initial training. Lifelong learning is becoming more and more essential.
So learning doesn't end with a diploma. It's an ongoing journey.
Absolutely. Individuals need to embrace this mindset of continuous learning and upskilling throughout their careers, and employers have a huge role to play in supporting that shift.
So it sounds like a real cultural shift is needed.
The companies that are really thinking ahead, they're realizing that investing in employee skills development isn't just a nice perk. It's essential for success in this rapidly changing environment. It fosters a culture of learning, which leads to higher productivity, more innovation, and a workforce that's more engaged and adaptable.
It's a win-win for everyone involved. Now we can't talk about the future of skills without acknowledging the elephant in the room technology. We've talked about the disruptive potential of AI and automation, but can technology also be part of the solution to this skills gap?
Absolutely. Technology can be a really powerful tool for delivering education and training in new and innovative ways. We're talking about online learning platforms, virtual reality simulations, personalized learning pathways.
So technology can actually make learning more accessible, engaging, and tailored to individual needs.
Exactly. It has the potential to break down those geographical barriers, offer flexible learning options, and provide personalized support. But we can't forget that technology is just a tool. It's up to us individuals, policymakers, business leaders to use it effectively.
Makes sense. Technology on its own isn't the solution. It's about how we use it to empower people and foster those essential skills. And you've also mentioned the importance of public-private partnerships. How can those collaborations help address this skills gap?
Those partnerships are key to really bridging the gap between education and the workforce. Businesses can offer those valuable insights into what skills are in demand, while governments can provide funding and create policies that support those skills. It's about working together to create a skills ecosystem that's more aligned and responsive.
It's about bringing everyone to the table with their unique strengths
Yeah,
to work towards that common goal.
precisely. And let's not forget about the importance of data and research. We need to constantly monitor the skills landscape, track trends, and evaluate whether our efforts are actually working. The 2023 survey of adult skills is a great example. It gives us a starting point, but we need ongoing data to make smart decisions.
So data becomes the compass guiding our actions.
Exactly. We need to make data-driven decisions about policy interventions, educational investments, business strategies. And one final point, and this is a big one, communication is key. We need to raise awareness about this skills gap and why it matters.
Get everyone on the same page, so to speak.
Exactly. Individuals, employers, educators, policymakers, we all need to be part of this conversation. Addressing this challenge requires a comprehensive and collaborative approach. It's not just the responsibility of governments or schools, it's a societal challenge that requires all of us to step up.
That's a really important point. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together. So we've covered a lot of ground here, investing in early childhood education, changing how we approach primary and secondary education, making sure everyone has equal access to quality education, adapting higher education and vocational training to the needs of the modern workforce, embracing lifelong learning, using technology, effectively building those public-private partnerships, using data to guide our decisions, and communicating the urgency of this skills gap. That's a lot to unpack.
It is. But these are the key ingredients for creating a workforce that's more skilled, more equitable, and more resilient for the future. It's a complex challenge, but it's one we can overcome with commitment, innovation, and collaboration.
I'm starting to feel a bit more optimistic. Now, before we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listener with a final thought-provoking question. Okay, so we've explored this whole skills landscape, right? We've seen some pretty big challenges, but we've also talked about some strategies to tackle those challenges. But I want to leave our listener with something to really think about. We've talked about the skills people need to thrive today. But what about tomorrow? What skills are going to be essential in a world that's, increasingly shaped by AI automation and all these advancements we can't even imagine yet? This is something you as a decision maker, whether you're in a government agency or a business, you really need to be thinking about this.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, as technology keeps evolving at this crazy pace, the ability to adapt, to learn, to even unlearn is going to be absolutely critical. We have to cultivate this mindset of continuous learning and embrace the unknown, accept that the skills we need today might be completely different from the skills we need tomorrow.
So it's not just about learning a specific set of things. It's about developing that capacity to learn and evolve as the world changes around us.
Exactly. And that means fostering a sense of curiosity, being willing to step outside your comfort zone and having the resilience to bounce back when things don't go as planned.
It sounds like we're talking about a pretty fundamental shift in how we think about education and training.
Yeah.
It's less about acquiring a fixed set of skills and more about developing the ability to adapt and learn throughout our lives.
Right. And it's not just about technical skills either. It's about nurturing those uniquely human qualities that machines can't replicate, things like creativity, empathy, critical thinking, and complex problem solving.
This makes me think about something you said earlier about this synergy between human and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, the future really belongs to those who can harness the power of both. AI can handle those routine tasks, which frees up humans to focus on the areas where we excel, things like creativity, innovation, and navigating those complex human interactions.
So it's not about being afraid of the robots taking over. It's about figuring out how we can work together with them to build a better future.
Exactly.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into this fascinating skills landscape. We've covered a lot, from the challenges of the skills gap to the ways we can actually bridge that gap. But the real journey starts now.
I hope this has given you, our listener, the information you need to make those informed decisions, to influence change, and ultimately to contribute to a world where everyone has the chance to develop their skills and reach their full potential.
And remember, investing in skills isn't just good for the economy. It's an investment in human potential. It's about building a more equitable and resilient society. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.